Today I want to speak about a godly home, a godly family. And if I just start giving you points, probably I could go up to 100 points on what a godly home should be like. And we know that wouldn't suit a Sunday service. And so I prefer to give you 7 points, and I've taken those points in an unusual way. I sometimes do unusual things. And today I want to do something a little unusual. And I'm going to pick out a family. And I'm going to preach my sermon based on that family. It's a family we all know. And I've chosen this family because it's a very exemplary family, a role model, and many good things which we will all accept. And I'm sure I will receive no protest from the family. I hope other believers don't protest. But I will take every point from that family life. And yet, my sermon will be from the Bible. I know some of you are already dying out of suspense. I just want to put you out of your misery and tell you who the family is. And then we'll continue. That family is found in Exodus. Exodus chapter 2, and read verse 1.
And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi.
So you're all saved. Here we read of a man who took to wife a daughter of Levi. Often when we read the Bible out of context, meaning out of the historical context, we may misunderstand how the chronology. We can misunderstand the order of events. So we see here in the first verse, a man married a woman, and the next verse we read a child was born, and that's how we imagine it happened. But actually there's a little difference there. This man and this woman, probably we've heard very, very, very little about them. Can you tell me the man's name? Can you tell me the woman's name? See, believers at the back, anyone knows? Amram and Jochebed. Do we often hear those names? We hardly hear of brother Amram and sister Jochebed. But I'll tell you, when I think of them, I think they were a beautiful couple. I'll tell you why. Because the Bible devotes not many verses to them. They were a very, very hidden family. Very hidden family. That's the beauty. You know, the beauty of a saint is that they will hide their saintliness. They won't reveal their saintliness. There was a time when God began to show me how I was not saintly at all. I used to always think I was a saint. And I used to always try to tell people how I'm a saint. I used to try to make people envy my spiritual standard. Until one day God opened my eyes to make me realize that I had nothing. And it really created a humility in me. When it created a humility in me, instead of remaining humble, I began to show off my humility. Because that's my nature. My nature is to trumpet anything that is good in me. But a true saint would hide anything good that is seen in them. They would not do it for people to see. If they do good to another person, they'll do it in secret. They'll do everything. So many people's testimonies and their value is known only after they die. During the funeral, when people testify, so often eyebrows are raised. Was such a glorious saint in our midst and we never knew. That's how it should be. Here, Amram and Jochebed are a hidden family, but today we'll expose them. This is an expose of what this couple really were. Chronologically, in between verse 1 and verse 2, many years have taken place. Because in between verse 1 and 2, 2 children are born. The names are Aaron and Miriam. 2, Miriam and Aaron were the 2 children of Amram and Jochebed. And in verse 2, we see a 3rd child is born. And this 3rd child was baby Moses. And today we're going to understand something from this beautiful family. Why I say beautiful family is, we all have children. And most of us are young parents and our children are still young. It's only when our children have crossed 2025 that we can say now we have outgrown that initial responsibility. Until then, we are all responsible parents. It's easy to bring forth, but it's very hard to bring up children. We may not realize how great that responsibility is. When God gave you a child, you were thanking God for the gift. Yes, children are God's gifts to us. But one day when He opens your eyes, you will realize that your children were not given to you as gifts, but you were given as a gift to your children. You are a precious gift to them. And if you do not remain that gift, your children are going to lose something that God planned for them. Look at Moses, Miriam, and Aaron. I'm not looking at them as babies or little children. I'm looking at them as when they became adults. 1. Moses. He was not an ordinary person. He became the deliverer of Israel. Secondly, his brother Aaron could have been an ordinary person, but Aaron became the high priest of Israel. Thirdly, Miriam, she could have at least been an ordinary person. No, she became the main worship leader in Israel. As they came out of Egypt, she was leading the congregation with her timbrels. 3 children, all 3 children became outstanding. What is the future of your child? How many parents are bothered about their children? You care to know if your child has eaten? Yes. It doesn't make you a spiritual parent. It just makes you a normal parent, because that's what worldly parents too would do. You make sure your child eats well, dresses well, sleeps well, studies well. These are all basic things which not just human beings, even animals are fitted with that natural instinct. It's a parental instinct. It doesn't make us in any way outstanding. But my question to you, young parents and parents to be, some of you may have children in future. Think again. Are you concerned about the spiritual health of your children? Think of Amram and Jochebed. Had they not been what they were, we would have 3 children in that family unheard of. We would never have heard of Moses or Aaron or Miriam. But they became such monumental examples, role models for us to emulate. And we can learn from that shining example that is speaking to us from Scripture. And you as parents, you have to take this example with you. If you only know what your responsibility is, let me tell you, today your child has been given to you. But I want to tell you one thing. It is not your child. It is God's child. And one day, your child has to stand before God. And that day, God is not interested in how many degrees your child has had or how many straight A's your child has got in school, how beautiful, how fair or how ugly, how fat or how short, how skillful, how talented. That's not what God would be asking that day. On that day, God is going to measure the spiritual standard of your child. And that's something that so many parents are unconcerned of. I find so many parents neglecting the spiritual health of their children. So many parents are not concerned about even their own spiritual lives. They come for meetings. You know, I'll tell you, so many parents, you think your children, God gave it to you as a blessing. You are looking at them as a burden. Why? Because of my children, I can't hear the sermons. Oh, my child is always crying. My child is always making noise. I tell you, one child is like 20 for you. But Susanna Wesley had 19 children. And all her children grew up as men of God. Charles Wesley, John Wesley, they all came from her children. And with 19 children, she had 1 hour of personal prayer every day. How did she do it? I was speaking to one servant of God who really focuses a lot on children's ministry. And I was saying there's a particular problem many parents have, and the children are too active, especially during the meetings. And I found in my meetings that children have got a special understanding when they hear my voice. Yeah. When they hear my voice, it's like a green signal for them. Let's make a joyful noise unto the Lord. And they all decide, come on, if he can scream, we too can. Let's follow the leader. And they all just go at it. And then, so what do parents do? I'll tell you here, it's very little compared to other places. In other places, they create a racket. Sometimes I have to stop preaching because they are so loud. There was a little girl in one assembly. Her name was Grace. I'll tell you, everything about her was disgraceful. Especially the noise she made. She had a gift, I don't know from whom, but she decided to open her mouth when I opened my mouth. And I'll tell you, when she did, actually air molecules just stood suspended. And a vacuum was created and we couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear myself. People couldn't hear me. I had to actually stop because her noise was breaking the sound barrier. It was a sonic boom. It was such a loud noise and parents didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And she was just 1.5 years old. I looked at the parents and parents didn't know what to do. The following time I went to that church, I was going there to give communion. I thought, okay, here is Miss Sonic Boom. I wonder when she's going to start. Do you know what happened that meeting? She sat in the first row, on the first chair, with a book in her hand, and she did not open her mouth from the beginning to the end, and it was not me. It wasn't me at all. It was a miracle. It was a miracle, and a miracle was performed by God through the prayer of the parents, and I witnessed it. I saw it happen. I was speaking to the servant of God and said, you know, most of our children get hyperactive during the meetings. What advice would you like to give parents? And he said, parents have to just use a little bit of common sense. What they have to do is they have to plan out the sleeping hours of the children in such a way. Keep them, don't let them sleep in the car. Don't let them sleep in the house. Let them come to the meeting and they'll fall asleep. Many parents have successfully mastered this art. Give them a whole bottle of milk. Let it be a sale. Buy one, get one free also. Give it to them, pamper them, put them to sleep. Then they are free, they'll be in paradise, and you can be in the presence of God too. So it's just a bit of common sense. Anyway, that was not part of my sermon. That was just a little bit of counseling thrown in edgeways. Now let's just come back to this family. A beautiful family whose children, the other day I was telling you about a family. Father and mother were both believers of our church. Once upon a time they were like you. Good parents, good believers, with 3 bouncy, bubbling, bonny boys in the church, everywhere, all over the place. Lovely children. What happened? Everything went wrong. Everything went wrong. The father, he lived a terrible life. He died a terrible death. The wife left her husband before he died, married another, left him, and finally married a Hindu. And then the children, one died a very dishonorable, disgraceful death. It was a very shameful, sinful death. The other turned into a Muslim. He looks like a terrorist. You see things happening like this to families. Not now. Not now. It happens later. What we have sown, we will reap. We will see on that day. The day will declare it, as we heard last night. The day will declare what we are sowing now. So many parents are just taking it easy. Children are small. It's an easy thing. You don't understand. They are developing their character now. One man of God said, "Give me a child for 7 years. After that, I don't care who has got the child." You know why? Because that's what the Bible says. Train up a child in the way he should go. Train up a child. And, I like you to look at that verse in a different way, in a way that you've never seen before. If you turn to Proverbs chapter 22 and read verse 6.
Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Train up a child. Listen carefully. How do you train up a child? In the way he should go. Meaning, you are training him now for his future. Train up a child in the way he should go. And what happens? When he is old, he will not depart from it. Now look at it the other way. As a parent, you take your responsibility very carelessly. Let your children climb all over you. Let them rule your house. Let them decide what they want. And you, out of great love, just give them everything they want. For 7 years they rule. You are training them up like that. Do you know what happens? The verse says you train them up like that, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. It's not just speaking of the good things. It's even the bad things. I know of children who have been abused by their parents when they were small. I request all parents to listen. It is the duty of a parent to correct the child. There may be times you may have to resort to physical punishment. Very euphemistically put, as one person said, the Board of Education on the seat of knowledge. You have to give something to the child from time to time. Yes, a smack. But when you do it, it's not what you do so much as how you do it. Never correct your child in anger. Always correct your child in love. And when I say love, I don't mean that you just smile from ear to ear and pearls keep dropping out of your mouth. That's not love. You can beat in love. You can scold in love. That's how it ought to be done. But so many parents, have you ever heard of parents who tell the child, "I'll break your head. I'll kill you if you don't come"? Have you heard of parents? I don't believe such parents are sitting in our midst. But sometimes our parents also do that. Why? Do you know why you have to come to a place where you have to curse them like that? Threaten them like that? It's a simple thing. A few years ago, you told them, come here or I will beat you. And the child decided, I will try and disobey. You know, a little child has still got a brain. I'll try and disobey. The child disobeyed and did not obey you. The mistake you make, you did not keep to your word. You forgot that you said, I'll beat you. In the child's brain has been recorded, my father threatened me, but he didn't do it. He threatened me, he didn't do it. The next time you say, I'll beat you, it will have no value. It will have no value at all. So you realize there's no point. It's like the Indian cow. You first speak to it, then you scream at it, then you kick it, then you twist its tail. That's how we bring up our children sometimes. We speak to them. Then we have to shout at them. But later we see it's not working. Finally we have to hurl abuses at them. We have to curse them and swear at them to make them move, to make them do things. That's not how a spiritual parent would ever be. One word, come here. You go there. That's enough. The authority in us will be respected. That is why it is important from the beginning. As a child, you tell the child, if you don't do this, I will beat you. I'll punish you. If you say that, do it. And the child will respect you. And parents who correct in anger, why do you do that? It's because you keep things for too long and then it just bursts out. You have to divide it, distribute it in such a way that you correct them from time to time. And when they have made a mistake and that mistake has to be corrected, call them, sit them down, say, look, this is what you did and what you did is wrong, okay? So I have to correct you for it. Now stretch out your hand. I'm going to beat you. And you beat them. And that's out of love. But you don't have to let your face become like a tomato and you scream and you shout and you lose your temper and you finally end up screaming at family members and there's so much peace lost in the house. That should never be. There are so many little tips I could give you like this and go on and on. Another thing is, parents must always be united. I'll say this and then carry on because these are all things I never planned to say, but they're just coming in. I'm telling you, parents must always be one. I know of some parents who've made a fatal mistake of loving the child for themselves. Whom do you like, mommy or me? You, daddy. Yeah, good. I scored a point. I've scored a point. You not scored a point, you just lost a point. You lost many points. You're damaging your child. It's not mommy or me. Mommy and I, we are one. That's what the Bible says. If I open my mouth, it is mommy opening her mouth. If mommy opens her mouth, it's me opening my mouth. That's why some children say, okay, wait. Let me ask mommy. Why? Because mommy will always have a different opinion. And when they go to mommy will say, oh yeah, you can do it. Oh, papa, mommy said I can do it. I'm going to do it. That's such a stupid mummy there. Because what she should have done is, did you ask Papa? Did you ask your dad? What did your dad say? This is how we function even in the faith home. You know, sometimes some believers are so silly. They think the leaders, the workers above them, they're like a brick wall. Let's jump the wall. And they go to the leaders above. You know, we want to do this. And they don't realize there's another wall there. And that wall speaks. And what did your local worker tell you? The leaders won't take a decision that is contrary to the local workers. Do you know why? It's not because the leaders submit to the local workers, but long before the local workers open their mouth, they have already asked the leaders about it. So it's the same mouth. One mouth, two speakers. That's it. That's how a home should be. If daddy says something, mommy should agree with it. And if for some reason the mother does not agree, she should not allow the children to know she does not agree with daddy. Her disagreements should be in private. The children must always see the parents as one. And never criticize the other parent for correcting the child. Talk to them privately, but never in front of the child. Parents who argue in front of the child, you are taking a knife and scarring the heart of your infant for life. It will only take a miracle to heal the heart of your child. Never ever have an argument at home in front of your children. It's so important. Okay, after giving you that pep talk which I never planned, let's just get back into the word. And it's important that we learn from this family because their children ended up becoming outstanding examples in Israel. How beautiful it would be if your children 20 years later are pillars in this church. How beautiful it would be. You know, you finished your race. One day you're going to die and you're going to be buried. And you're going to go away into your resting place. But how beautiful before you die. One thing I know, my mother, before she died, she blessed me and said, thank you for being my daughter. Because I used to look after her, I used to help her at home, I used to always do so much for her. And I did it not because I had to, but because I knew it was my responsibility. I did it out of love. And I just thank God because I spent most of the beginning years breaking her heart. I was grateful to God that my mother left this world, blessing me. I don't know what your mother is going to say as she leaves this world. Her parting words, her famous last words, they say, probably she said, my child, you were such a headache. Goodbye. Moses' parents died one day. But just imagine how happy they would have been. They could be so grateful to God for helping them. They did their duty. They fed them, they clothed them, they educated them, did everything. But it's not just that. At the end, because you parents must know, you don't just give birth to children. These children are God's gift to you. These children actually, they belong to God. You know, it's like suitcases moving in the assembly line on the conveyor belt. They move from one point to the other point. These children, from one point to the other point, they belong to God. They are passing through this world and they have to go back to God. On the way, He had to give them to someone. He gave them to you, trusting that you would do what He wants you to do. And that's your duty, to find out, what must I do with my child? What must I do? I heard of a little girl, a 12-year-old girl, and belonged to a church. Suddenly one day, she died. And remember, children die too. And the day she died, it shook the whole church. They were all worried. The day after her death, the father was very pensive, very thoughtful. He wasn't talking much. And then he decided to open his mouth and bring out all his fears and feelings. And he spoke to his wife and said, can I have a private word with you? He asked, where do you think our baby will be now? Where do you think she would be now? And she looked at him, unable to answer the question that she very well understood the first time. She said, I don't know. But he said, come on. She's gone from us. We're not going to have her again. Is she happy now? Where is she? The mother began to get worried. And she said, well, you know, all my life I knew that she was Papa's girl. Because it's very natural in a family that the father loves the daughter and the mother loves the son. Now that's a normal family. That's how it is. There's just a little piece of information for you girls. You always feel your mother loves the boy more. That's very natural. But that's why your daddy loves you more. But here was this father asking. And the wife said, I don't know. She was your child. He said, come on. I know I loved her. But she's a girl. And there are things that I don't think I could tell her. Did you tell her? She said, not really. I thought you would have. I said, but come on. You are the mother. I expected you. Realizing that they had failed, they ran to the Sunday school teacher. And the Sunday school teacher said, but I'm sorry. Your child comes to me for 40 minutes every Sunday. And I've got this huge syllabus to cover. And I wasn't able to speak those things. I wasn't concerned about her soul. I was more concerned about her marks. And so I didn't speak to her about her soul. So the father asked, but I'm concerned about my daughter's soul. And the wife turned to him and said, don't you think it's a bit too late? Because wherever she is gone, she's going to be, there's no purgatory. She's going to be there forever. But then where has she gone? They decided, let's go to the minister. They went to the servant of God in charge of the church. Where is our daughter now? And the pastor looked at them and he said, you know, my responsibility to stand here in the front and preach. But I believe it is your responsibility to act upon what I am preaching. For 12 years she was with you. And you are concerned for her soul after she is dead. They left that place with a fear. Because they felt probably she's in hell. Our baby has gone to hell. It's because of our foolishness. When we could have done something, she was given to us. We didn't bother. Instead, we just brought her up as a worldly girl. Now she's gone. What are you going to do? I'm asking you, parents. When your child is taken from you, or you are taken from your child, you have an account to give to God who gave that child to you. Amram and Jochebed are going to speak to us. First of all, in Exodus chapter 2 verse 1, we read that, very clearly we read that the man who was a Levite, he found a daughter of a Levite. He married into his own tribe. Now, those things are literal, but we must understand it spiritually. We don't read that he looked for a beautiful woman. We don't read that he looked for an educated woman. So often today people, when they want to choose their wife, the first thing they pull out is a tape measure. What did he look for? He said, she is a Levite. She belongs to my tribe. We see in the days of Noah how people began to look for beautiful women. They began to look for partners whom they wanted. And that's the present situation of this world. People think they've got the right. You're also old-fashioned. You go around choosing your own partners. Your partners that are appointed by parents. We date. We find our own partners. That's not biblical. Dating is not scriptural. That's not from the Bible. The Bible teaches us a completely different thing. The world is messed up. But don't forget, the world is on its way to hell. The joy that the world is enjoying is always something I would compare to a man's last meal before he hangs. He probably must be feasting on sausages before he dies. And he must be gobbling it up. And he doesn't bat an eyelid that he's going to die. He doesn't care. He's enjoying his meal. And the world is doing just that. Enjoying the last meal before the people themselves become barbecue in the lake of fire. They are enjoying the world. They're enjoying everything that this world has to offer. And let's not be suckers, going after them, trying to have a little bite from their food. God has separated us, taught us the truth. Here we see a Levite. He found a wife who was a Levite. So many lives have been destroyed because they go and find wives after their own heart. They don't wait upon the Lord. They don't ask the Lord. But here, praise God, in the very beginning, Marriage is such an important thing. At the foundation, this Levite was sure, this is the wife that my God has given me. And he married her. Dear parents, probably your wife is a Levite. Now, who is a Levite? You see, the Israelites were 12 tribes. And they were separated from Egypt. Egypt speaks of the world. And Israelites speak of all the saved children of God. They've come out of Egypt. But amongst the 12 tribes, Levites are those who stood with the priests. So they are believers who belong to the truth. And we see here, finding a wife is such an important thing. A spiritual wife. He looked for a spiritual partner. Someone who would help him. That means he was concerned about his spiritual condition too. So many husbands have told me, I married her for her beauty. Now I'm repenting. I married her thinking, she's beautiful and I would enjoy my life. But now I realize I'm living with her character. I married her for her beauty. But now I realize beauty is only skin deep. Dear children of God, if you're not happy with your partner, praise God, God is able to help you. We are not offering you someone else because that's what the world says. In the UK, they talk about the 11-year itch. 11 years is the average a man can live with his wife. After that, he has to look for one like he changes a pair of shoes. Or probably every 2 months like your toothbrush. You don't change partners. Divorce is absolutely against the heart of God. But why do they do that? Because they're not satisfied. But God is able to heal broken marriages. God is able to restore broken homes. And He can make it like the home of Amram and Jochebed. I have seen it happen, believe me. I have seen families restored beautifully. Now, let's just get on to the second of the 7 points that I'm going to give you. Let's read verse 2. Exodus chapter 2, verse 2.
And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a godly child.
Was he?
Goodly child, she hid him 3 months.
Brother Sumesh has this habit of dropping letters because at the last minute there's a war raging in his mind. Probably it's a printing mistake. So I think once before he did it, and he read it as godly child. But that's the exact meaning. I'll let you know. So probably the Spirit led him to read like that. But I'll tell you why. Here we read, his mother saw him as a goodly child. All of us mothers, the moment our babies are born, we have our noses in their tummies and cooing at them and saying, oh, God has given me an angel. God has given me an angel. My child is the most beautiful. How many of your parents dare to disagree with me? Isn't your child the most beautiful child in the church? Silence. But it's so true. You love your child. Here we read Moses' mother, she looked at her child and said, what a goodly child. And we think, okay, that means she admired, oh, he's such a chubby and strong and smart fellow. He's going to grow up. He's going to be a handsome young man. Is that what this verse means? We must understand what that word means. In Hebrews 11:23, you don't have to read it, but the same thing is written there in Hebrews 11:23, which we will read later. She saw him as a proper child. Now that also is not clear because this is old English. Probably we find it few words we can easily misunderstand. Saw him as a proper child. You may think, okay, first thing that this mother did, she started counting his fingers and his toes. 5, 10, 15, 20. Thank God all 20 are there. No, that's not what it means, proper child. The meaning is not even in Acts 7:20, but I'll explain it from there. Acts chapter 7, verse 20.
In which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months.
When he was born, he was exceeding fair. Now that is where we are going to get the real meaning from. Now, when we read there, he was exceeding fair, probably he looked white as a paper. Is that what we think? One thing we must understand, Jewish children. Have you seen Jewish children? Anyone seen a Jewish child? What do you know about Jewish children? They are all like Europeans. They're all very fair. Jewish children are all fair. So when we see Moses was exceeding fair, people who are dark-skinned, they are the ones who are conscious of color. Those who have a light skin are not bothered. So why should the mother look and say, my child is exceeding fair? It's not that she was bothered about the color of his skin. Let me explain to you from certain other translations. The New International Version says, he was an unusual child. The margin of my Bible says, fair unto God. The Living Translation says, she saw him as a divine child. But I found the best coming from the International Standard Version, the English Standard Version, the Amplified Version, the Darby's Version, the Young's Literal Translation, and the Modern King James Version. They all say the same thing. She looked at the child was beautiful unto God. Beautiful unto God. In other words, she was not admiring him for herself, my beautiful child. But she saw in him a child whom God was looking at and saying, my beautiful child. He was beautiful unto God. Let's understand this, mother. We don't know Sister Jochebed, but I just wish she was here to personally testify. I would gladly sit down and write notes. She would tell us what she meant by proper child, goodly child. It's godly child. This is how she understood. When she looked at baby Moses, straight away she understood. God has a divine purpose for my child. God has a plan for my child. Probably she heard a voice saying, my daughter, your child is precious to me. Many things are not recorded. But from that moment onwards, she lived like Mother Hannah. Mother Hannah, who looked at baby Samuel, always knew, this baby is not mine. This baby is God's gift to me. And one day, I have to give my baby back to God. And on that day, I must give my child ready. My duty should be completed. I must not give a child who's not prepared. So she knew her duty, her responsibility was to take care of her spiritual health. We also must have that vision. We must be able to see our children as dear, beautiful to God. My child, God has a plan for my child. God has a purpose for my child. Instead, what do parents do these days? They forget the plan of God. They are busy planning their own future. My child has to become a doctor, or my child has to become a nurse. My child has to become a football player. My child has to do this. My child has to do that. You are making plans for your child. How foolish. Have you ever thought, God, today we heard a testimony from the mother and the father. I dedicated my child. Do we all know the meaning of dedication? Probably we mean blessing. We just want a pastor to bless. But that's not the meaning. When we say dedicate, it means, Lord, you gave me this child. From this point onwards, I want to remember that this child is not mine. But I'm giving this child back to you. And I am not a parent. I'm only a caretaker. I'll be a parent as a caretaker. Bring up the child as your child. And when the time comes, Lord, I will give my child to you. Whenever you ask me, here, I will give my child back to you. That is how Moses' parents looked at him. Point number 3. Let's read verse 2 again.
And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months.
She hid him 3 months. Point number 3. She hid him. Why did she hide this child? Just read the last verse of the previous chapter.
And every daughter ye shall save alive.
Is that, yeah, you forgot to turn over. The last verse of the previous chapter. Chapter 1.
And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast him into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive.
Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had issued a command. And he said, every baby boy who is born, you have to cast into the river. Only save the girls alive. He had commanded in anger. You know, the king of Egypt was a very, very angry man. And when he made a commandment in anger, probably people would die. And in anger he issued this command and said, all Hebrew male children must die as soon as they are born. And he could see that the Hebrew race was coming up. And the same mind of Hitler worked. Wipe them out. Wipe them out now. Nip it in the bud. Don't wait till they grow. So he issued this command. And probably that's why Aaron survived. Some parents may think, why only one basket? Why wasn't Aaron also put into the basket? Why only for Moses? Because the command was every child who is born. Aaron was born before the command was given. So now when the command was given, the next thing that happened is Moses who is born. Now what does she do? She takes baby Moses, puts him in the ark of bulrushes in a little basket, and when she hides him for 3 months, what do we look at it as? It looks like an act of fear. Probably she was afraid of the king. I want to show you how this was not fear. It was exactly the opposite. What this mother did was not because of fear, but because of faith. Now read Hebrews 11 verse 23.
By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment.
That's Hebrews 11:23. He was hid 3 months. Now, when you read that, you read by faith Moses. That's how it begins. And very often people get confused. They think that verse refers to the faith of Moses. By faith Moses. If you read the verse, you'll understand. By faith Moses was hid. It's intransitive. He was hid, meaning the parents hid them. The verse means by faith the parents of Moses hid baby Moses. That verse refers to the faith of his parents. By faith they hid him. And they were not afraid of the king's commandment. It's so clearly written there. They were not afraid of the king's commandment. Dear children of God, we are God's children. And there is no earthly lawmaker, a school teacher, or anybody else in the government. They can pass laws. Even the worldly governments today are passing so many laws concerning our children in schools. Yes, all children must learn this. They have to be taught this. As a function coming up, as a party coming up. In the UK, they had a Harry Potter week. All the children had to dress as witches. They had to do all these things. And one parent came, what do? I said, you do nothing. Because we are not bound by the law of the land. We are not afraid of the king's commandment. But so many parents, they're so afraid. These are the parents who were once converted, probably say they were a Hindu before and they became Christians. And in order to get into a university, they would have signed Hindu. Because they lived like that. Now they're doing the same thing to their children. You don't have the courage to stand for the truth. This mother was not afraid of the king's commandment. Fourthly, now read verse 3. There we see a real mother's trial. Verse 3.
And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink.
A time came when she could no longer hide him. And now a time has come for her to act. She has to know the child has to be separated from the mother. Pharaoh had said, throw all the boys into the river. The Bible doesn't tell us how much she would have prayed, but she must have really prayed. God, I can no longer hide this child. I am putting him into this ark and I'm placing him in this river. And Lord, I am placing him. My child is in your hands. And she must have placed him. The reason I say she must have really prayed is what happened after that. The child came back into her hands and she didn't have to hide the child anymore because the child came back with a stamp of royalty. Pharaoh's own court rubber stamped the decision that she should look after her own baby. You can see how when the woman did not fear the king's commandment, God fought her battle. The child came back to her with a stamp of royalty. Fifthly, we see what a consecrated mother she was. Chapter 2, verse 10.
And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water.
The child grew. Moses' mother must have had him for a few years. And what was the condition? The condition was this. When Pharaoh's daughter found the basket and found the baby, she needed someone to wean the child, to care for this child. And it so happened that Moses' mother was the right choice. So when she gave baby Moses to the mother, to Jochebed, she said, bring him up for me, later I will take him. So, what was the mind of Jochebed? This child is not mine. One day this child has to go to the palace. And every day she had that understanding. This child is not mine. She loved him, she cared for him, did everything for him. But she always knew, this child is not mine. God has some purpose, some plan, I don't know what it is. But so many mothers don't live like that. From the beginning they are gushing out emotions of love. Love, love, my baby, my baby. That's why when they are 25 years old, you still give them nappies to wear. You just don't know, my baby. This guy is bursting his trousers. He's got a huge mustache. And you still say, my baby. My little baby. Where is my darling baby? 25 years old. I've heard of a mother. Because this fellow used to do that. He'll come, mommy, mommy, mommy. Come and fuss at home and go and sit on her lap and play with her cheeks. He was 24. And he knew. You know, I'll tell you, children, I'm going to give out your secret. Children have a baby voice. Mommy, mommy, I want to eat something. Children know that baby voice. They have a baby voice for the home. You just listen to them in their schools. Hey, what are you doing? Hey. That's another voice for the school. This fellow, 24, he was drinking in his school. He was drinking. And then he passed on to college drinking with his friends. Did the mother know? She didn't know anything. She knew nothing. But when he came home, he knew how to act the baby. Anyone goes and tells the mother, you know your child, no, I know my baby. I know my baby. My baby is my baby. That's, I don't know. Forget it. I don't want to say anything, but probably I'd say something wrong. This is not love. That's stupidity. What happened to Moses' mother? She brought him up knowing, this is not my baby. This is God's baby. And God chose me and gave this baby to me. And I have to bring him up every day until the time comes for me to let go. A time will come, dear child of God. A time will come for you also to let go. Would you be willing? Would you be willing when the time came? She let go and let her become Pharaoh's daughter's son. How was she able to know that? Do that? Because she knew that was the will of God. In Acts chapter 7, we really understand the meaning of what the act that she did by putting him in that basket. By putting him in that basket, what was she doing? We read in Acts 7:21.
And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son.
When he was, let's read that again. And when he was?
Cast out.
You see, what did we read about Jochebed? She put him in a little basket, probably put all his cuddly toys into it, and gave him a little shake and said, baby, 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 and gently put him. But Acts 7:21 tells us, when he was cast out, what does it really mean? He wasn't really thrown into the river, but he was cast out of her heart. Meaning, there is a certain amount of unhealthy love a mother can have. A possessive love for the child. So possessive. I know of a mother. Her firstborn son belongs to God. And when a servant of God went to the mother and said, if the Lord calls your son for the ministry, what are you going to do? No way. She went and hugged him and held him and gave him that bear hug. He's mine. I won't. And he was enjoying every bit of it. He's mine. He's mine. I was just looking at that scene. I was disgusted, to be honest. Probably I'm a bit more mellow now. But back then I was disgusted. I said, so you're trying to say he's yours and not God's? What kind of a mother are you? He's mine. That's a mother with absolutely no idea of what consecration is. I won't give my child to God. I will keep my child for myself. That's so foolish. Parents, you must have a revelation. Because Jochebed had cast him out of her heart, she was able to put him in that basket. Then she got him back. But a time came when she had actually to send him to the palace. She was willing to let go. Why? Because she trusted in Pharaoh's daughter? Because she trusted in Pharaoh? Or she wanted her son to be a great person? Sending my son to a best university because I want him to come back with a string of degrees after his name? No. She knew that was the will of God. The time will come when your child must do the will of God. And you as a parent must know what God's will is for your child. So many parents say, I don't know, you ask my child, you ask my son, you ask my daughter. Do you know? No, I don't. I don't care for the spiritual health of my child. That's why I don't know. I only care for the physical health and the education. Sixthly, read Hebrews 11:23 again.
By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child and they were not afraid of the king's commandment.
I want to focus on that last part again. Not afraid of the king's commandment. Dear children of God, today many parents are afraid of the king's commandment. And we know we are living in a Western world where so many things are different from different parts of the world. Probably in the East, the laws are different, the land is different, the pressure is different. In the Western world, we have so much peer pressure. And there's so much worldly wisdom, worldly counsel that is being given. But here, we see a mother who was not affected by the counsel of the world, the pressure imposed on her by the friends in the world who had their own children. But she, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in a strange country, was willing to be firm. Today, so many parents are not concerned about their children. I was in the UK in a particular assembly, and parents of a little boy, they were very concerned because he was only a little boy, and they found him to be exhibiting a certain type of aggression that was very out of character. And it was sudden. It was not a gradual development. They found him suddenly to behave very aggressively. And they brought him to me and said, we don't know why he's behaving like this. So I had to ask them a few questions. You know, questions are important. Train up a child. The word train in Greek is katechize, meaning ask probing questions. Try to know. Try to find out. Ask probing questions. Teach them with questions and answers. So anyway, I asked the parents. So how did this begin? Where did it develop? How did it develop? And they began to tell me, you see, the thing is, both of us want to work. And so ideally, according to the Bible, ideally, the wife stays at home, the father works. Or the father stays at home, the wife works. One parent stays and looks after the child. Keepers at home. You go and read Titus and Timothy. You'll read there. Keepers at home was Paul's counsel. Someone must be there to care for the child. Here both parents wanted to work. Both decided to go and gave the baby to a childminder. You know, sometimes we can be so foolish. I remember once a couple came to me, brother, we have no children. The wife was young and she was really distressed. 7 years and no baby. I'm really distressed. I want a baby. So we three of us servants of God, we just prayed on the spot. And the next thing we heard, she's pregnant. And we were so happy. God answered that prayer so quickly. It was amazing. Child was born and we were called. We were so happy. 4 months later, the mother said, I want my freedom back. I'm bored. I can't be a mother like this. And so what did she do? She gave the child to a childminder. She wants to enjoy her single life again. No one wants to be responsible. So this couple, back to this couple, what they did, both wanted to work, gave the child to a childminder. I'm asking you, God gave you that child. And what are you doing? Passing the child to someone else. Let somebody else look after my child. And the childminder, what do you think she was doing? From morning to night she was fasting and praying for your child. Praying, Lord, this is Moses, Moses, Moses. Lord, praying for your child. Isn't it? If you're that bad, she's going to be worse. What did she do? She put the child in front of the TV. And she carried on with her work. Morning to night, the child is sitting and watching TV. What's he watching? WWF. World Wrestling. Watching that, what do you expect? What do you expect the child to do? He comes home, he started being aggressive. He became violent. What a child sees, a child becomes. When I was a little boy, probably, 7 or 8, maybe like Abraham. But I was very gutsy. I thought I was tough. And one day I challenged a boy who was much bigger than me. We were in the faith home. It was a Sunday afternoon after the meeting. And we were talking to each other. He said something, I said something. And I said, do you want to fight? He said, don't tempt me. I said, what? I'm not afraid of you. So he said, okay, shall we fight? I said, yes, we'll fight. And the next thing I knew, I was on the floor. I blacked out completely. I don't know what he used, probably his hands. But it was like a sledgehammer. It just whacked me in my solar plexus. I went crumpling, fell down. I woke up maybe a few hours later. I couldn't breathe properly and I was needing all that sympathy and all that love. We need that as well. So later, that poor fellow, I was the one who provoked him. But then he was being questioned and, as things normally happen in churches, the wrong person gets caught in the end. So he was called and he was questioned and finally he said, well, I always watch boxing on TV. So I just thought, okay, till now theory, now let me get into the laboratory. practice. So he used me as a guinea pig, and he was successful. But what I'm trying to say is, what a child watches, a child becomes. And he became. This boy became aggressive. Now that was TV. Those days are gone. Some people say, I have no TV. But you've got the internet, isn't it? You don't need a TV these days. It's so old-fashioned to have a TV. You get an internet and get this screen that's so big it bursts your roof. That's it. You enjoy everything more than the TV. But what are you doing? So many parents, they've got a childminder. The childminder is two-dimensional. It's a screen. Oh, I'm fed up. Put the child in front of the TV or the computer monitor screen. Put the child there and let me carry on. Fine. But are you sure what your child is watching? Are you monitoring everything? Do you know? I know of so many children who have confessed that without the knowledge of their parents, they were watching things. Probably if I begin my ministry in Ireland, which I haven't, these children will start telling me, yeah, actually I've been watching these films, please don't tell my parents, please. That's it, they're going to cook me for lunch and I'm finished. Don't tell my parents. Okay, I won't. But if you're doing anything like that, you better own up. Children, they become secretive later and they start watching things without the knowledge of the parents. Today it's YouTube. Tomorrow it's going to be the tunnel down to hell. YouTube, it can be a cartoon. All that it requires is one little mouse and one little click, and they're down the road to hell. And our children, some of our children, they're so clever. When I look at them, I feel I'm such an idiot. Because probably at their age, the only thing that I knew was to wet my nappies. And here our children are so clever, they just know. I look at them, I think, what's this? They're like child prodigies. Probably they're going to become pastors when they're 7 years old or something. They're clever children. Let's not just be overjoyed by their smartness. We must understand clever children can also become cunning. And we have to be exceedingly watchful. What can they be doing? It's so easy. When I was a little boy, I wanted to read comics. Superman and Batman. My parents, I tell you, they didn't want me to read anything. But I just wanted to. So what would I do? I knew my way until one day my father said, I've been sitting there and watching you. For the last 45 minutes, you haven't turned the page of your chemistry book. Why? It's because I was turning something else in between. There was another book inside a book within the book. That's how I used to read it. But those days have gone. Children know how to conceal. They know how to be secretive. So parents think, okay, we have to use filters. I'll use it. One father said, we have this, we'll just pull out the cord. You think your child is so daft, he depends on a cord? You depend on God, they don't depend on a cord. They have other ways to do it. Okay, I'll use a safe filter, a password. What's a password? Our children are too clever. They leave it like that, but they know how to go around it. They just know everything. I've got this information just 3 days ago. 2 little children, how they were able to fool their parents. I was very sad because I love those children. And I can see the parents are worse than ostriches. They don't even understand that they have a responsibility. They don't care. They don't care for the health of the child. We must be concerned. I'm not saying don't do this, don't do that. But I'm saying be concerned. Do you know your child? Do you know everything about your child? Probably later you'll find that your child is in the mafia or something. You say, no, my baby. Yeah, of course, nowadays they have babies in the mafia. Let's understand, we must not be afraid of the King's commandments. We must not be under pressure like the people of the world. We must not be afraid of reproach from worldly friends and believers. We must fear nothing. We must fear no one but God. On the other hand, we must also include our children in our family devotion. Our children must learn to pray. How our children behave in a meeting is nothing but a public exhibition of what your home is like. Some children, they know to fear God in a meeting. They close their eyes. Do you know why? Because they're taught that in their homes. What they are taught, they practice. But some children, faith home is like a playground. Okay, I'm not talking of after the meeting. During the meeting too. Why? Because they have not been taught. At home there is no family altar. There's no presence of God. There's no prayer. There must be daily prayer. Daily discipline, consistent time for parents and children to get together, to study the Bible together. Okay, now it's your turn to read the Bible. Children love to read the Bible, by the way. We can just make it a game. They love it. Our children, they love games. And you just teach them to memorize, teach them to read. And they love to study the Bible. But then, parents, slowly you must start asking, which verse out of that touched your heart? Parents must ask children to tell the Lord to speak to them. And they must say, did the Lord speak to you? It is your duty. Don't be like the father of the 12-year-old who waited for his daughter to die to start thinking about her soul. We must teach the children to hear the voice of God and how to apply it to their lives. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 6, from verse 1 onwards, it tells you how much it is a commitment for parents. I'll read it for you because there are 9 verses I want to read. Deuteronomy chapter 6, from verse 1 to verse 9. Now these are the commandments, the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that he might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it, that thou mightest fear the Lord thy God to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that he may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Now listen. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes, and thou shalt write them upon the posts of thy house and on thy gates. You can see, in the Old Testament itself, God had told the parents, it's such a responsibility for you to teach your children these things. Once there was a sinner, a slave trader. He was a terrible sinner. He was in the sea and he was going to die. He was caught in a violent storm. In that storm, suddenly he remembered what he was taught as a child. You don't know when that word will help them. He remembered what he was taught as a child and he cried out to God, save me. The Lord saved him from that storm, and the Lord saved him from his sin. His name was, you don't know, his name was John Newton. He was the one who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. That song was his testimony. But it was because that seed was sown when he was a little child. So parents, you must teach. Train up the child. Don't fear the king's commandment. Train up. But you must, how do you teach? The best way to teach, as my parents, I would say, I'll testify about them. They taught me not by their mouth, but by their life. It was their example. The love of God, the fear of God, being sensitive to others' needs, being responsible. These are all things that we must train our children by our example. But the greatest example is your own spiritual life. How many parents are setting a right example? When I looked at my mother, there was nothing I could find. There was a time when she wanted to be a fashion model. She told me there was a time she wanted to be a fashion model. That was her whole ambition. Decoration. And in her college, which I found out later, she was the one who would set the design for hair. Every week she had a new hairstyle. And all the other girls would look at her and design their hair accordingly. Because hair is so important for a woman. But the day the Lord touched her heart, God doesn't just touch her heart, He touches everything. He touched her hair too. And she said, I consecrate my hair for the Lord. My hair will not be used for beauty. And she became a godly woman. And let me tell you, when I looked at her, I saw Jesus in her. But how many parents can say, yes, I am like Jesus for my children. I'm setting an example. They are watching. Our children are watching. Our children are learning. And what we are teaching them now, they will become later. Let's not be blaming and scolding our children. Many things we do, they are wrong. And coming back to this hair, I'll tell you something frightening. There's a spirit behind it. Some people, they are not able to give up worldly hairstyles. This happened in North London. A believer is there today, but when she came into the church, she was possessed with several demons. She was a teacher of witchcraft. She came from Mexico, a teacher of witchcraft. And when she was being ministered to, the deliverance ministry, it took so many years. But there were times when the spirits were being cast out. And she said, this is the spirit in me. And she said, first she would start crying. After a while she would start manifesting a demon. And when she was manifesting a demon, what she would do? She'd walk like this. And they asked, what demon is that? She said, I'm the demon of walking style. You know, how many people, they sit in front of the mirror and they watch to see if their hands are moving right, and they want to have a catwalk. They want to have a right walk. But she said, I'm the demon of walking style. And she went on and on and on. At one point, again she went crying because a demon had left. She was depressed. Then another demon began to manifest. And you know what she did? She shook her head, threw her hair in front of her, smelt it, and did that. And they said, what demon is this? She said, demon of hairstyle. Do you tell me demons affect only sinners? They can affect believers too. I've gone beyond time. I'm very sorry. But I really want to tell you the truth and finish off. Demons can affect us. Pastor S.B. said demons don't get into believers. But staying outside, they can control our lives. So let's really be careful. Let's understand the time is very short. Jesus is coming soon. And we have to do everything to care for our children. We have to do everything to bring up our children the right way. Set a good example, not a worldly example. Set the right spiritual example. And the final thing, if you read Hebrews 11:27.
By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king.
Not fearing the wrath of the king. Who is that? Moses. You read in the earlier thing, in verse 23 you read, the parents were not afraid of the anger of the king. Now you read, Moses is not afraid of the anger of the king. What do you understand? It's a transfer of character. What character is in the parent will also be found in the child. I have seen this again and again and again and again. What character is in the parent will be found in the child. We see that also in the life of Timothy. If you read 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5, you see what faith was in his grandmother. It came to his mother. What was in his mother came to him. Yes?
When I call in remembrance the unfringed faith that is
unfeigned. Unfeigned.
Unfringed.
Feigned. It's not fringed.
Unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, I am persuaded that in thee also.
Yes, in thee also. The faith that was in your grandmother, it was transferred to your mother. Now it has come to you. What is in you will be given to your child. So don't just give your child your looks, which is natural. Don't just give your child natural food and clothing. Give something spiritual too. Something from your character will be transferred. If you're an angry person, your child will be angry. If you're a lustful person, that same lust can be transferred to your child. Be very careful. So we must give something good, like Timothy's parents and mother and his grandmother. Look about Samson also. He was called to be a Nazirite. The Lord told Samson is going to be a Nazirite, therefore he should drink no wine. He should remain consecrated. Then God told Samson's mother, because your son is called to be a Nazirite, you also must not drink wine. You must set that example for your baby, and he will learn from you. That's so important. Our children, they learn from our lives. I'll tell you, my mother spoke many things, but it was her life that was speaking. I told you yesterday, I don't remember when, my parents never fought at home. I never saw them fighting. That spoke to me. I saw my mother praying. I saw my father praying. Family prayer every day. It spoke to me. The things that they did spoke to me much more. I remember their life more than what they taught. Let us learn from Amram and Jochebed. Whatever they did well. And they left 3 beautiful children that were pioneers in Israel. 3 beautiful children that went all the way to be outstanding examples. They had beautiful deaths recorded in the Bible. What a glorious family, unheard of so long, and yet all there in Scripture for us. Shall we close our eyes? God must really help us as parents to do our part. Young parents, old parents, it doesn't matter. We have a great